What do you want out of life? Liberty? Property? The pursuit of happiness? Maybe just some good food? Whatever you want, the Bazaar has it. The Bazaar is the long-awaited competitive deck builder from renowned Hearthstone personality and noted gachamushi enthusiast Reynad.
What are you listening to and why can't I download this faster?
Also a future encounter in the Bazaar. Please send help, he's running out of anagrams for Andre. You run errands, buy items, invest in yourself, and beat up anyone you come across. It's not just capitalism, it's ranked competitive capitalism. Because it's a competitive game by design, it can be a bit unfriendly for folks new to the genre or unfamiliar with its systems. With that in mind, let me give you a quick rundown of the current state of the game and my experience with it. I'm by no means the best, but I've sunk quite a bit of time into it, which is usually good enough. I'm Extra Shoddy. Welcome to the Bazaar. In the most abstract sense, the Bazaar is a roguelike deck builder. If you took Slay the Spire and added a billion more shops, you'd probably get something similar. And like Slay the Spire, you have an array of heroes, of which 3 are currently playable. Vanessa is a fugitive from the nation of Pelago and is using the Bazaar as a staging ground to fund a presumably violent coup. Pygmalion is an up-and-coming investor sick of his people's peaceful ways, as well as their respect for human rights over property rights. Dooley is just a little guy, with dreams of chronic and sustained cruelty for the glory of machine kind. They spend their days gathering items, experience, and new skills to grow in power and influence. There isn't a clear answer as to who's the strongest among them at any given time, but as long as there's disparate power between them, there's going to be a public enemy number 1. This title was retained by Dooley for quite some time, though right now he's going through a rough patch. The Bazaar is structured into days, with 5 hours, each offering 3 random activities. These range from browsing shops, scrounging nearby wastes, and stumbling upon all its strange happening. The game's staging ground for combat is auto-battling. The Bazaar was originally conceived as a collectible card game in the same vein as Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Hearthstone, but transitioned into an auto-battler during its development. Your loadout is presented as a rug where your items are placed, and most of them possess effects with either damage, debuffs, and/or defense. During the first few days, your rug grows 2 spaces every time you level up, but afterwards you'll be reliant on upgrading items, swapping them out for better ones, or enlisting the help of personal trainers to give you skills to pay those bills. You're guaranteed at least 2 fights a day, a monster at hour 3, and another player at the end of the day. The Bazaar's PvP is asynchronous, meaning that you'll face another player's ghost, or their loadout at the end of a given day. This means that no matter how powerful of a ghost you fight, it was attained in the same amount of time available to you. Over time, a character's loadout tends to coalesce into a build, or combinations of items that synergize particularly well with each other. You could spend quite a bit of time talking about the intricacies of which effects work well together, but that would take a bit too long, so we'll go over some basics. Weapon damage is straight and to the point. You eat through shields and health until there's nothing left. Poison deals damage per second, accumulates with every cast of a poison item, and ignores shielding. A player loses when their health reaches 0, no matter how much shielding they had, so poison builds can effectively ignore it. This isn't always such a good thing. Burn deals damage twice per second, and accumulates very similarly to poison, but loses 1 point of burn twice per second as well. Your burn items need to cumulatively deal 2 burn per second to build up damage, often a bit more to make up for your opponent's slow and healing. This makes it fairly weak in the early game, but terrifying in the mid to late game. Healing restores lost health, and lowers accumulated poison and burn by 1 every time it's applied. Shields create a separate stack on top of your health that depletes in place of it from weapon and burn damage. Burn damage is halved while shields are present, meaning that you can be somewhat resilient against burn by stacking a lot of it. There's no built-in cap for shielding, so it's easier to accumulate compared to healing. Haste and slow double and halve the speed of items respectively. Not every hero has equal access to haste, so make use of it when it's offered to you. Slow can be extremely important in delaying accumulating damage or scaling from burn or poison, and that can buy you enough time to overwhelm your enemy. Freeze, one of the more elusive effects, completely stops an item from moving, but freeze items tend to only work on items their size or smaller. You'll see it more often from skills than items, but every now and then you'll meet an icy pufferfish and curse it for having ever been born. As a quick disclaimer, all the footage recorded for this video was prior to the release of the open beta. The first patch of the beta increased the cooldowns of most items, meaning that the game you play will likely be slower than what you're seeing here. This has some interesting implications for burn items, but that's a problem for the future. Anyway, every hero has a different way of forming a win condition. Vanessa has access to many high-damage ammo-based items, aquatic items designed to work with one another, and many items that apply or benefit from haste. Pygmalion has a heavy emphasis on accumulating value with his items and scaling their stats with his own economy. Dooley has a heavy emphasis on teamwork between items, via myriad friends and interaction with his cores, unsalable items that Dooley obtains at the start of every run. I've played far more Vanessa than Pig or Dooley, so I can't speak too much about their intricacies, but you'll get a feel for their strengths the more you play them or face them as enemies. You'll be offered items, skills, and events from your hero's own pool in most circumstances, but there are quite a few ways to obtain other heroes' items from fights or some events, so you'd be surprised at the variety of builds you can make, or at least builds you'll get smacked by. It's less important to aim for the best build my current items can ever make than what's the strongest I can be today. Every victory counts, and making the most of your current opportunities makes all the difference. That said, planning for what you'll need in the mid or late game can pay off immensely, though you can't always predict what you'll have to work with. At the beginning of a game, you're offered a starter kit to begin your quest. This consists of some combination of items, skills, and cold hard cash. There's a lot of variance in what makes a given kit work for a particular character, so if you're just starting out, try a bunch of things in unranked and see what kind of builds you can make work. You'll need at least 2 extra EXP to level up before the fight at the end of the day, and since your first few level ups expand your board, early XP can be run changing. Certain events will grant you extra XP under certain conditions, one of which is possessing a toy or friend. These kinds of opportunities can give you an edge on a given day, so remember them when you find them. Your midday monster fight is one of your more important decisions in a given day. While you gain 1 XP after every event, monsters are a reliable way to move ahead of the Bazaar's XP curve. The rightmost monster is typically stronger, but offers extra EXP as a reward. That said, this is all moot if you lose. You'll regret picking on that gamer after he gives you the Dave Bazan treatment. You'll gain gold after removing certain increments of health from a monster, but you won't get any XP or loot without fully defeating them. You'll need to weigh the options between which rewards you want from a given monster, your ability to fight them, and how much XP you have at a given moment. Early and mid-game strength can be key for developing a strong build, as you'll have more choices from monsters you can fight and defeat. There's no shame in using outside resources to check the power of a given monster and its rewards from places like howbazaar.gg. Websites like these are valuable tools for learning the game, and there's no shame in having a spare tab open while you're playing. For every 8 XP you accumulate, you'll gain 1 level, which grants you health, board space, and a variable extra reward that can range from items, skills, item upgrades, and constant reminders that you have very few friends. The most important reward comes from level 10, which offers an enchantment. Enchanted items have additional properties on top of their effects, and they often scale with that item's stats. For instance, the Fiery Cutlass, a reward from an early monster fight, gains 1 burn for every 10 damage it possesses. If you have skills or items that increase its damage or its burn, it can accumulate a lots of burn very, very fast in the early game. Once again, howbazaar.gg has a list of associated enchantments for every item in the game. Getting a key enchanted item can be a turning point in most players' runs, so players can become significantly stronger once they reach level 10, and that usually occurs around days 8 or 9. Winning fights against players earlier in the run means you don't have to try and beat some of the exponentially more powerful builds in the late game, and that's a huge incentive to get ahead of the XP curve. After all, every Pygmalion is a businessman at heart, and they're going to make sure late-stage capitalism kills everyone it can. Your health bar, aside from your health bar, is your reputation meter. Every time you lose a fight against a player, you'll lose rep equal to the day. Once that rep reaches 0, you'll be given 1 more life and a pity reward. You have 3 choices, but the obvious one is a free enchantment. This is the kind of thing that can save your run, or at least salvage it enough to get to a higher tier victory. There are 3 victory tiers in the Bazaar, at least in ranked: Bronze, Silver, and Gold at 4, 7, and 10 wins respectively. Your run will end at 10 wins, so builds worthy of deification have to stop bullying players at some point. Perfect victories, or 10-win victories where you never lose a single player fight, are functionally the same as Gold, but you get to feel good about yourself. I don't know what to say from here, so I'm just going to talk about my favorite item, the Weather Glass. For every other status ailment you can inflict with your active items, sans haste, the Weather Glass gains an additional cast of burn and poison damage. A lot of times you'll end up with different items and skills that don't form a cohesive game plan with one another, and the Weather Glass can consolidate them into a surprisingly strong game plan. It's a no-build build, where you take random garbage and then burn your opponent for hundreds of damage per second. It becomes much stronger with enchantments, such as giving one of its enablers haste or another effect, or even turning itself into a weapon. You know, the kind that hurls broken glass into your enemy's face. The perfect weapon. Is what I would say if the proboscis didn't exist. The proboscis is weird. It's an item that drops only from the most pitiful of enemies, only deals damage when you inflict slow, and it starts with only 10 or so attack. But the beauty of the mosquito mouth is the way that slow is applied in the Bazaar. Certain tools slow multiple items at once, and the proboscis deals damage for every item slowed. What would happen if, say, you had an item that slowed 4 things at once? What would you think if I added 100 damage to the proboscis? And what would you say if I had an enchant that doubled the proboscis' damage? And what if I doubled it again? The Bazaar is out now in open beta. Be the bastard of a stockbroker you've always dreamed of. Thanks for watching. Whenever I'm not too sure what direction a video is supposed to go, it tends to end up becoming unhinged. I've had some inkling of an idea for a video about the Bazaar, but the announcement of the open beta made me buckle down and edit this down in a few days. I have an affiliate link for the Bazaar in the description below, so if you're interested in the game, give it a look from there. If you like videos like this, let me know in the comments below. Stay classy.